Oh, are you kidding me? Oh, shoot. Hey guys, how you doing? So here I am. I'm back with another live stream. I was getting set up and a little sharing with you. I obviously have this little drink here because my throat dries out as I'm talking and over and over and over again. And it was sitting like right over here, and I glanced at it, and it could have been my mind playing tricks on it. But when I looked at it, like on the edge of the rim, I could have sworn I saw like a little black something, a speck of dirt, a fly, whatever. I don't know. And as I glanced at it, it went into the cup. And this happened like right as I was hitting live. That's why it was just music for a second there. Because I was actually trying to stir it up. And trying to... Has that ever happened before and you saw something fall in and you can't find it again? And you're like, maybe I imagined it? Maybe I didn't? Well, they say you digest how many spiders in your sleep, which is 100% false. But that's going to be in the back of my mind the entire night, that there's some little... I wonder if I could see it by doing... No. It wasn't big enough. It could have been just like my eyes just getting freaking old, and I thought I saw something over there. It could have been a real bug. I don't know. Guys, hey, welcome back. Another live stream read of The Hobbit. So 2 minutes in, I haven't even started reading it. But good thing is, this is a short chapter. This is only like about 10 pages, but it's like some of the most important pages in the entire book. Probably not the most famous. There's more famous scenes, but this was a big one. No, okay. I thought maybe the sip I just took, I just kicked out the bug. That's going to be on the back of my mind all freaking night. All night. If a bug really flew... I know some people would just like, well, dump it out. Go pour a new one. I mean, I don't see anything. It would be funny if taking a sip, I just start choking. No, it wouldn't. That wouldn't be funny at all. There's nobody here to help me. Anyway. Guys, chapter 14, Fire and Water tonight. So, I'm looking at the live viewers, and there's not that many, and that's okay. I'm not doing this for billions of views, and I'm just looking to, like, keep myself busy, which I'm going to be a little more busier because I just got a work computer today, so which means I'm probably back to like getting up at the 3:30 a.m. grind, whenever that is. Oh yeah, this was something else. This, I assume, is a birthday gift because my birthday was last month, and my best friend Corey got me a... are these DVDs or are these Blu-rays? The Blu-rays. Nice. Of a series, of an anime series that I'm assuming it's a birthday gift because my anniversary is next week, and it would be kind of weird to give this series as a anniversary gift, which is a Shimonetta, or A Boring World Where the Concept of Dirty Jokes Don't Exist. This is a funny show. It's very satirical, very authoritative what if scenario, where if in the future you just outlaw everything that's considered dirty and obscene by the adults. Hearing some rattling in there. I'm gonna have to check that out later. And the end result is how the youth of that particular area starts to get raised, because once kids become teenagers, they're gonna be like, what's this all about? And no one's there to teach them the right or wrong or this or that or anything else, so it just all madness ensues. And it's actually really funny, really dirty. Don't watch it in front of kids within 50 miles, but it's highly entertaining. I highly recommend it. Again, it's called Shimonetta, It's an anime. I think you can get it. I'm not sure if you can get it streaming anywhere. Oh, and the other thing I got to point out real quick is there are parts of the episodes that are censored by the studio. Like they put there's this little graphic of a worm, and they put that over body parts that. And you know, if you watch a show and it's censored with bleeps, sometimes that's funnier than watching the raw footage itself. It's kind of like that. It's actually a lot like that. So just watching how they censor, and sometimes you think, did they censor what I think they did to hide something, or were they trying to make a joke? And sometimes it's both cases. But again, Shimonetta, watch it, don't watch it. It's kind of... You gotta find out for yourself. So that's my anime review. Let's go ahead, get into this short chapter. And since it kind of worked last time, I think I'm gonna do the Scottish accent. That wasn't a Scottish... That's the Scottish accent. No, it's not a Scottish... My Scottish accent's rubbish. Again, I'm gonna be watching that all night. So if you're watching the replay, thank you guys. If you're watching it live, thank you. Please, go ahead, chime in if you want. Alright, so... Last chapter, the dwarves and Bilbo started moving into the cave after Smaug had left. And they're looking around and like, okay, here's all this gold. Let's find some stuff. And they're like, is Smaug coming back? We don't know. So now we're going to find out what the hell happened to Smaug. Where did he go? What is he up to? Alright, again, in the bad Scottish accent. I still can't do it when I'm describing it. Now, if you wish, like the dwarves, to hear news of Smaug, you must go back again to the evening where he smashed the door and flew off in a rage 2 days before. The men of Lake Town, Esgaroth, were most likely indoors, for the breeze was from the back end of the east and chill. But a few were waking on the quays and watching them as they're fond of doing, and the stars shine out from the smooth patches of lake as they opened up in the sky. From their town, the lonely mountain was the most screened by the low hills in the far end of the lake, through a gap in which the running river came through the north. Okay, that sounded more like the House of Stark than Scottish, but I guess it's kind of the same thing. Let's keep going. Only its high peak could they see when in the clear weather, and they looked seldom at it, for it was ominous and drear. Oh, that's hard with the Scottish. Even in the light of morn. Now it was lost and gone, bloated in the dark. Suddenly, it flickered back to view. A brief glow touched it and faded. Look, said one, the lights again. Last night, until the watchman saw them start to fade until midnight, until dawn. Something is happening up there. Perhaps the king on the mountain is foraging gold, said another. It is long since he went north. It is time the songs began to prove themselves again. Which king? Said another, with a grim voice, as like to not is the muttering of fire and dragon, the only king on the mountain we have ever known. You're always foreboding gloomy things, said the others. Anything from floods to poisoned fish. Think of something cheerful. Then suddenly a great light appeared in the low light in the hills, and the northern end of the lake turned golden. The king beneath the mountain, they shouted. His wealth is like the sun, his silver like a fountain, his rivers run golden. The river is running gold from the river. Okay, they mentioned Golden River several times. The river is running gold from the mountain, they cried, and everywhere windows were popping open and feet were hurrying. There was one more tremendous excitement and enthusiasm, but the grim voiced fellow ran hotfoot to the master. The dragon is coming, or I am a fool, he cried. Cut the bridges, to arms, to arms! To arms, to arms. That wasn't very good, sorry. Oh, I hope I'm not peaking the levels too much. Then warning trumpets were suddenly sounded and echoed along the rocky shores. The cheering stopped and the joy was turned to dread. Soon, it was that the dragon did not find them quite unprepared. Before long, great was his speed, and they could see him as a spark of fire running towards them, and the growing ever huger, and more bright, and not the most foolish doubted all the prophecies that had gone rather wrong. Still they had a little time. Every vessel in the town was filled with water, every warrior was armed, every arrow and dart was ready. And the bridge to the land that drowned down and destroyed before the roar of Smaug's terrible approach grew louder, and the lake rippled red with fire beneath the awful beating of his wings. Wow, there's a mouth workout right there. Amid shrieks and wailing of the shouts of men, he came over them, swept towards the bridges, and was foiled. The bridge was gone, and his enemies were on the island in the deep water. Too deep and dark for his liking. For if he plunged into it, a vapor of steam would arise to cover all the land of mist for days. But the lake was mightier than he. It would quench him before he could pass through. Roaring, he swept back to the town. A hail of dark arrows leapt up and snapped and rattled on his scales and jewels, and they fell back, kindled by his breath burning and hissing into the lake. No fireworks you ever imagined equaled the sights that night, as the twanging of the bows and the shrilling of trumpets and the dragon's wrath blazed to its height, till he was blind and mad with it. No one had dared give battle to him for many an age, nor would they have dared now, if it had not been for the grim-voiced man, Bard was his name, who ran and fro, cheering on the archers and urging the master to order them to fight to the last arrow. Fire leaped from the dragon's jaws. He circled for a while high in the air above the lighting of all the lake. The trees by the shores shone like copper and like blood in the leaping shadows of dense black at the feet. Then down he swooped right through the arrow storm, reckless in his rage, taking no heed in turn to his scaly sides towards his foe, seeking only to set the town ablaze. Fire leaped from thatched roofs and wooden wood beams as he hurled down the pass and round again. Through all he had been drenched with water before he came. Once more water was flung by 100 hands wherever a spark appeared. What's appeared? Appeared. Back swirled the dragon. A sweep of his tail and the roof of the great house crumbled and smashed down. Flames unquenched sprang into the night. Another swoop, another house, and then another sprang of fire and fell. And still no arrow hindered Smaug or hurt him more than a fly from the marshes. Already men were jumping into the water on every side. Women and children were huddled into laden boats, into the market pool. Weapons were flung down. There was mourning and weeping, where but a little time ago the old song of mirth came to hands, had been sung about the dwarfs. Now men cursed their names. The master himself was turning in his great gilded boat, hoping to roll away on the confusion and save himself. Soon all the town would be deserted and burned down to the surface of the lake. That was the dragon's hope. They could have all stepped on the boats for all he cared. There he could have fine sport hunting them down. Or they could still starve to death. Let them try and get to land, and he would be ready. Soon he would be all the shorthand woods ablaze, and wither every field and pasture. Now he was enjoying the sport. He was enjoying the sport of town baiting more than he enjoyed anything for years. But there was still the company of archers, and they held the ground among the burning homes. Their captain was Bard, grim-voiced and grim-faced, whose friends had accused him of prophesying floods and poisoned fish, through they know his worth of courage. He was a descendant in the long line of Girion. In the long line of Girion, Lord of Dale, whose wife and child had escaped down the running river from the ruin long ago. Now he shot with a great yew bow till all his arrows but one were spent. The flames were near him. His companions were leaving him, and he bent his bow for the last time. Suddenly, out of the dark, something fluttered to his shoulder. He started, but it was only an old thrush. Unafraid, it perched by his ear and brought him news. Marveling, he found he could understand its tongue, for he was of the race of Dale. I guess people of Dale are bird talkers, bird whisperers? Hey, birdie, what's up? Wait, it said to him. The moon is rising. Look. Oh, I guess this is the bird, so I should. Wait, it said to him. The moon is rising. Look for the hollow of the left breast as it flies and turns above you. And as Bard paused in wonder and told him the tidings of the mountain and all it had heard. Then Bard drew his bowstring to his ear. The dragon was circling back, flying low, and he came. The moon rose above the eastern shore and silvered with his great wings. Arrow, said the bowman, Black Arrow, I have saved you for the last. You have never failed me, and I have always recovered you. I have you from my father, and he from old. If you ever came from the forges of the true king under the mountain, go now and speed well. The dragon swooped once more lower than ever, and as he turned and dived down, his belly gilded white with sparkling fires of gleams in the moon. But not in one spot. The great bow twanged. The black arrow sped straight from the string, straight from the hollow left by the left breast, where the forelong was flung wide. In it smote and vanished. Barb, shaft, and feather, so fierce it was its flight. With a shriek that deafened men, felled trees and split stone, smoke spout into the air, turned over and crashed down from high in ruin. Fell on the town he fell. Full on the town he fell. Full. His last throne splintered into sparks and gluds. The lake roared in. A vast steam leapt up, white in the sudden dark under the moon. There was a hiss, a gushing swirl, and then silence. And that was the end of Smaug and Esgaroth, but not of Bard. Getting a little crazy with it, but that's fine. The waxing moon rose higher and higher into the wind. It grew old and cold. It twisted the white fog and bending pillars and hurrying clouds and drove them off to the west to scatter in tattered sheds over the marshes before Mirkwood. Then the many boats could be seen dotted dark on the surface of the lake, and down the wind came the voices of the people of Esgaroth, lamenting their lost town and goods and ruined houses. But they had really much to be thankful for. They had thought of it, thought that it could hardly be expected that they should just then. 3/4 of the people of the town had at least escaped alive. Their woods and fields and pastures and cattle and most of their boats remained undamaged, and the dragon was dead. What that meant they had not yet realized. They gathered in mournful crowds upon the western shores, shivering in cold wind, and their first complaints and anger were against the master who had left the town so soon, while some were still willing to defend it. He may have a good head for business, especially his own business, some muttered, but he is no good when anything serious happens, and they praised the courage of Bard and his mighty shot. If only he had not been killed. If only he had not been killed, they all said.
If only he had not been killed, they all said, we would make him a king. Bard the dragon shooter, the last line of Gurloin. Girioin. Alas that he had lost. And in that very mist of their talk, a tall figure stepped from the shadows. He was drenched with water. His black hair hung wet over his face and shoulders, and a fierce light was in his eyes. Bard is not lost, he cried. He dived from Esgaroth with the enemy was slain. I am Bard of the line of Girioin. I'm never going to pronounce that correctly. I am the slayer of the dragon. King Bard, they shouted, but the master grounded his chattering teeth. Girioin was Lord of Dale, not King of Esgaroth, he said. In the Lake Town we have always elected masters from among the old and the wise, and have not endured the rule of mere fighting men. Let King Bard go back to his own kingdom. Dale is now freed by his valor, and nothing hinders his return. And any that wish to go with him may, if they prefer the cold stones under the shadow of the mountain to the green shores of the lake. The wise will stay here and hope to rebuild our town and enjoy again its time, its peace, and riches. We will have King Bard, the people near the hand shouted in reply. We have had enough of old men and their money counters. And people further off took up the cry. Up the bowmen and down with the money bags. Wait a minute, you want money? Yeah. Until the clamor echoed along the shore. I am the last man to undervalue Bard the bowman, said the master warily, for Bard now stood close behind him. He was tonight earned an eminent place in the toll of the benefactors of our town, and he is worthy of many impressionable songs. But why, O people? And here the master rose to his feet and spoke very loud and clearly. Why do I get all your blame? For what fault am I to be deposed? Who aroused the dragon from his slumber, I might ask? Who obtained us rich gifts and ample help, and led us to believe our old song could come true? Who played in our soft hearts and our pleasant fantasies? What sort of gold have they sent down the river to reward us? Dragon fire and ruin, from what should be claimed the recompensation of our damage and aid for our widows and orphans. As you see, the master was not his position for nothing. The results of his words were at the moment that the people quite forgot their idea of a new king and turned their angry thoughts towards Thorin and his company. Wild and bitter words were shouted from many sides, and some who had sung the old songs loudest were now heard loudly crying that the dwarfs had stirred the dragon up against them deliberately. Fools, said Bard, why waste words and wrath on those unhappy creatures? Doubtless they perish first in fire before small came to us. Then, even as he was speaking, the moment thought came to his heart is a fabled treasure of the mountain lying without guard or owner, and he fell suddenly silent. He thought of the master's words and Dale rebuilt. He fiddled with golden bells if he could find the men. At length he spoke again. This is no time for angry words, master, or for considering weighty plans of change. There is no work to do. I serve you still, though after a while I may think again of your words and go north with any that will follow me. Then he strode off and helped in the ordering of the camps and in the care of the sick and the wounded. Then the master scowled at his back as he went, and remained sitting on the ground. He thought much, but said little, unless it was a call loudly for men to bring him fire and food. Now everywhere Bard went, he found talk running like fire among the people concerning the vast treasure that was now unguarded. Men spoke of recompense for all their harm that would it soon get from it, and wealth and despair to which to buy rich things from the south, and it cheered them great in their plight. That was as well, for the night was bitter and miserable. Shelters could be contrived for few. The master had his own, and there was little food. Even the master went short. Many took ill and wet and cold and sorrow that night, and afterwards died, who had escaped uninjured from the ruin of the town, and in the days of the followed there were much sickness and great hunger. Meanwhile, Bard took the lead and ordered things as he wished, though always in the master's name, as he had hard tasks to govern the people and direct the preparations for their protection and housing. Probably most of them would have perished in the winter, now they hurried after autumn, and help had not been at hand. But help came swiftly, for Bard at once had speedy messengers sent up the river to the forest to ask the aid of the king of the elves of the wood, and these messengers had found a host already on the move, although it had only been the third day after the fall of Smaug. The Elven King had received news of his own messengers and from the birds that lived in the folk, that loved his folk. Folk. And already knew much of what happened. Very great indeed was the commotion among things with wings that dealt in the borders of the desolation of the dragon. The air was filled with circling flocks, and the swift flying messengers flew here and there across the sky. Above the borders of the forest there was whistling, crying, and piping. Far over Mirkwood, tidings spread, Smaug is dead. Leaves rustled and startled, ears were lifted. Even before the Elven King rode forth, the news had passed west right to the pine woods of the Misty Mountains. Bjorn had heard of it in his wooden house, and the goblins would counsel in their caves. That will be the last we hear of Thorn Oakenshield, I fear, said the king. He would not have done better to remain my guest. It is an ill wind, all the same, he added, that blows to no any good. For he had too not forgotten the length of wealth of Thor. That's a tricky word, with a Scottish accent. Soon it was that Bard's messengers found him now marching with many spearmen and bowmen, and crows were gathered thick above him, for they thought the war was awakening again. Such had not been in those parts for a long age. But the king, when he received the prayers of Bard, had pity, for he was long of a good and kindly people. So turning his march, in which he had first direct towards the mountain, and hastened now down to the river to the long lake. He had not boats or rafts enough for his host, and they were forced to go to the slower way by foot, but were great store of goods he sent away by water. Still, elves are light-footed, and though they are not in these days much used to the marches and treacherous lands between the forest and the lake, their going was swift. Only 5 days after the death of the dragon, that they came upon the shores and looked over the ruins of the town. Their welcome was good, and may be expected, and the men and their master ready to make any bargain for future in return for the Elven King's aid. Their plans were soon made. With the women and the children, the old and unfit, the master remained behind, and with him were some men of craft and many skilled elves, and they busied themselves felling trees and collecting the timber sent down from the forest. Then they sent down raising many huts by the shore against the oncoming winter, and also under the master's direction they began planning for a new town, designed more fair and large ever than before, but not in the same place. They removed northward hired up the shore, for ever after they had dread of the water they had where the dragon lay. He would never again return to his golden bed, but was stretched cold as stone, twisted upon the floor of the shallows. There, for the age of his huge bones could be seen in calm weather amid the ruins of the piles of the old town. but few dared to cross the cursed spot, and none dared to dive into the shivering waters to recover the precious stones that fell from his rotting carcass. But all the men of arms who were still able, and most of the elven king's array, got ready to march north to the mountain. It was thus that, in the 11 days from the ruin of the town, the head of the host passed the rock gates at the end of the lake and came to the desolate lands. That was chapter 14. Fire and Water. There's not a lot left, and I know there's a lot to cover. We got... Oh god, I just passed some singing. Well, stay tuned for that. That should be fun for everybody, but except for me. Alright, so anyone who's tuning in, thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in. Whether you're watching the live stream, whether you're watching the replay, awesome. Go ahead, leave a comment below of what your favorite part of the entire story up to this part. Whatever you like. Go ahead, like, subscribe, and you know what? Check out some of my other socials. All the links are in the description. You can find me on Twitter. You can find Cretan's Guild as well on Twitter, and you know, all the other places. The links are down there. You'll find them. Don't worry about it. Guys, thanks again for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun for me. I don't know if I'm going to keep doing the Scottish accent. It's a struggle. It's not easy, as you can probably hear. But thanks for tuning in anyway, guys. Thank you so much. I will see you this weekend. We'll see. Stay tuned.